Trying to make sense of the autofocus settings on the newest Canon cameras? I'm here to help on today's episode of
Ask David Bergman.
Hey there everybody, welcome back. Here I am, as always, answering your photography questions right here on Adorama TV. If you've got a photo question, you know what to do. Just go to askdavidbergman.com, submit that form on the site, and I just might pick your question to answer right here on a future show. Quick reminder that I've got a new simple webpage set up with links to all of my stuff, my live workshops, my one-on-one consultations, all my social media accounts, and my free email list. It's all at thedavidbergman.com. Check it out if you watch this video, and of course, I'll put a link in the description down below. Okay, this week's question was sent in by Jose M, and he wants to know, in a previous video of yours, I was amazed by the way you set up the Canon EOS R5 AF on and star buttons for face tracking and normal focus. I use this setting all the time. Now with the new R5 Mark II, what tips can you give us for setting up subject tracking modes, eye control, moving AF point, and so on, especially for sports and music? Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Jose. I've actually received a lot of messages basically asking the same thing about all these new autofocus settings. If you haven't seen it, the video he's talking about, I did it a few years ago called Canon R5 R6 Fast Eye Autofocus Switching, and the thumbnail says Game Changer in big letters. Now, I normally don't make clickbaity pronouncements like that, but in this case, it's actually true. I showed how I set up my cameras to quickly and easily switch between letting the camera focus on someone's eyes and using the old-fashioned single-point AF for those times when there's no face in the frame or I just want to place focus on someone else. It's a pretty popular video, and I'll put a link down in the description if you want to check it out. But it was targeted at the R5, which was the newest Canon full-frame mirrorless at that time. Now we have the R5 Mark II and the R1, and the menus do have some changes. So for this video, what I'm going to do is go through all of the important autofocus settings for those models, which are the newest ones today in 2025. Now, I'll try to describe what each setting does, but keep in mind that these are my personal cameras that I use for concert photography. I shoot concerts just like a sporting event, so it'll be relevant for any kind of photography with moving subjects. Actually, I don't really change my settings even when I'm photographing other things like portraits or landscapes, so this is how I have it set up. The only changes for the camera that I use as a remote on stage for our shows. My two handheld cameras are both EOS R1 bodies, usually with the 24-105 and the 100-500 on them. My remote is the R5 Mark II, but I'm going to start this video with the R1 because they're pretty much the same. The R1 actually has a few more options, so that way I can cover it, and then I'll mention the couple of settings that I change for my remote camera on the R5 Mark II. So let's take a look at my menus right here. The first one I'm going to go through, I'm not going to go through every single autofocus setting, just the ones that I think are important that have changed since the last time and to kind of show you how I've set things up. So AF operation, of course, you're on Servo. We all know we're shooting Servo so that your focusing system is moving constantly. But then we've got our AF area. Now, when I go in there, I've only got three options here. Spot AF, expanded AF area with the 8 points, and whole area AF. Now, I'm going to talk in a minute when I get to that menu about why I only have three available, because you can actually you can limit the number of things that are available. But honestly, I only shoot the expanded AF area for this particular setting. Now, you have to think of it this way. This is basically my default setting for the camera. I can have things change when I press other buttons, and we're going to get into customizing those buttons. But for my default autofocus shooting, I want that expanded AF area. Let me show you why. The reason is, let me pull up a picture here so that I can show you. So I've got this picture of Luke Combs and Bailey Zimmerman that I shot recently, and they collaborated on a song together. It's actually pretty great. Go check that out. I like having that expanded AF area visible in the frame so that when I move around, I can sort of see where the middle of my frame is. And also, because of the way I focus, I want to be able to put that in different places, which I'll talk about in a second. But if I was using the whole area AF, I would not see that point. It just kind of shows me all the tracking info, but that's it. I like having that point there. So I'm going to use the expanded AF area, and then I can see it in my frame. Now, I really don't use the tiny little spot AF. That's a really small little point, but if I want to have the option to put my focus point exactly in a certain spot, it's nice to kind of have that available if I need it. So, but that's how I have that set up. I'm only going to use the expanded AF area. And by the way, the difference between that one and the one to the left of it It's just those outer points are kind of like hooks. So it just helps you to grab onto your subject a little bit more. In case you get off the subject just a little bit, it's not going to immediately zip out to the background. Whereas if you're using a tiny little spot area, that's what's going to happen. As soon as you go off your subject, it's going to zoom out. It's going to zip out that focus onto whatever's under that point. So I like the expanded AF area. It's just a little bit bigger. And then whole area tracking Servo AF. It's kind of a mouthful, but I'm going to have that on. And what that means is once I decide where I want to shoot, who I want to focus on, or where I want to focus, once it locks on a subject, I'm now holding down my back button. I am a back button focus shooter. So once I'm now holding that down, it'd be the same if I was shooting with a half button press. Once I have that locked down, I can move around however I want. And you can see that blue box, it's going to stay on my subject. It's going to stay on whatever it was on. Now, the way I shoot, if I want to change subjects, there are a lot of ways you can do it. You can use the joystick to sort of move to another person. There's a bunch of, you can move your focus point. You can do a bunch of things. For me, the fastest and easiest way to do it is to go ahead and put my focus point, my expanded AF area, on the person I want to photograph. Go ahead and focus. Then if I want to switch, I let go of my back button, I put it on the other person, and then I can push down on that back button and it's going to stay locked on. So here I can focus on Bailey. Here I can focus on Luke. Really nice and easy. Once I push down on that back button, it's going to stay on them. If I've got 10 people in the frame, I can choose exactly who I want to focus on. So that's why I have that set up the way I do. If I turn whole area tracking off, it's not going to track. So it's just going to still look for faces. It's going to look for things, but it's not going to stay locked onto that person when I'm focusing. Other important settings here, subject to detect. Obviously I'm going to use people. Eye detection I have on auto. Register people priority. This is awesome. So what that allows you to do, I have this on. You can photograph somebody and save them into the memory of the camera. This doesn't get wiped out when you format your card. It stays in the camera memory. What this does is you can register a person or people in order who's the most important that you want the camera to focus on. So you can photograph them, you can register them from an image on the card. I've already done all this, so I can now look at change, delete priority, and you can see I have Luke Combs in there. I always wanted to focus on Luke first if given the option. So when it sees Luke, it's going to prioritize him. However, I'm still using that expanded AF area, so it gives me the best of both worlds because it gives me a little more control. Let me show you. If I was to be on the full whole area AF, now I can't really choose where I'm focused on. So it's going to pick Luke. You see how it has that little icon on the bottom right of that box with a little person icon? That means it's recognizing that's Luke Combs. So that's pretty awesome. But in this case, it's only going to focus on Luke. I can't really switch to Bailey, however, it's always going to, because I have Luke on prioritized. However, when I go, because I shoot with the expanded AF area, I can now put my focusing box on Bailey and it's going to choose him and stay on him until I switch to Luke. Now, if it's kind of like out in the no man's land in the middle of nowhere, it's going to prioritize Luke because it's not really finding a person under my AF expanded AF area. So it's gonna prioritize Luke in that case. So that's kind of nice. If I'm just off a little bit, it's always gonna find him. But if I want to focus on somebody else, I just put it on them and there we go. So that's why I have that set up the way I do. Register people priority is awesome. Action priority, I don't use. That is a sports setting where if you just want to point the camera at a sport, it's going to be in focus. It's pretty amazing. It's got basketball, volleyball, and what's the third one? Basketball, volleyball, and soccer. And it's going to, if your kids are playing that sport and you just want to point your camera in that direction and hold down that focus button, either half button press or back button, it's going to recognize the sport if you have it set for that particular sport, and it's going to focus incredibly fast because like when somebody passes the ball, it's going to know that it's somebody's passing the ball and it's going to focus on the person they're passing to before the ball gets there. It's actually pretty amazing. I shot sports professionally for many years. I want a little more control than that. So I don't use that mode, but it is pretty cool to have if you want it. Case modes, I'm on auto. Nothing really to talk about there. These settings I'm not going to go through. They haven't really changed since the last camera. Here's where you can limit those AF areas. So because I have those other ones off, I can't even choose them. So it just saves me the time if I want to switch from spot to expanded AF area to whole area. I don't have to cycle through all those other ones. That affects the settings here, right? So I only have those 3 available. And then back to here, same thing. Again, these are all similar from the old cameras. So I'll put links to my R1 video that has a full walkthrough on all this stuff. The other important settings here, it's nice, by the way, that you can register all these settings. So if you want to change them over, for different sports or different things that you shoot, you don't have to go through each individual setting. The other things to talk about are eye control. The eye control is not AF eye autofocus. The eye control it's looking at my eyes and it's seeing what I'm looking at, and it's fantastic. This is the 2nd generation. It works really well, even with my progressive glasses. You do have to calibrate it. You have to go through a calibration process, and the more you do it in different lighting conditions, the better it's going to learn, and it does work really, really well. But like I said, I prefer to just place my expanded AF area on the subject I want to photograph. To me, it's just faster, it's simpler. Maybe it's because I've always kind of shot that way. I just, rather than having it track my eyes, again, I've used it and it works really, really well. But it's just, to me, I still feel like I'm giving up a little bit of control, and I just want to be able to put the focus point on who I want to focus on and where I want to focus. So I don't use the eye control. The other setting, though, that's really important for how I shoot and with these new cameras is to customize your buttons. So I'm going to come in here and customize everything. So the shutter button, as you know, I only have on metering. All that does is when you press the shutter, it wakes the camera. The meter comes on. I don't use the meter, so it doesn't really affect me in any way. But you can't turn that off, so that's fine. It does start metering. But then the AF on button is important. So let's go down to the AF on button. That's that button on the back. That's the back button focus. Here in the R1, we have some new settings. That is because there are now 2 positions on that button. There's a half press and there's a full press. Now, again, I'm kind of old school. I don't use the half press. I suppose if you were not shooting back button focus and you were focusing on the shutter and you wanted 2 functions on that back AF on button, that could be cool. You can program it for a lot of different things. I only use it for autofocus, to activate the autofocus. So I have this on number 2. And if you hit info, you can see what it is. The half button press does nothing. The full button is metering and AF start, which is what I want. I want to activate the autofocus with that. The other ones, you can go ahead and you can program these things. So if you're on 3, for example, you go here and you can full press and you can change it to whatever you want. Again, I don't use that. I'm on number 2. That means half button press is nothing. Full button press is autofocus. And then, just like Jose mentioned on that star button, this is what I've always done with the with my other cameras. I want to have eye autofocus on the AF on button, and the star button right next to it. I want to have my old-fashioned single point AF focus point, because I'm photographing somebody and their full body, their eye is in the frame, it's going to focus on their eyes. But then if I zoom in like a guitar player on his hands or her hands, I want to be able to tell it where to focus. There's no face. It doesn't see any eyes. So I want to switch to my old-fashioned single point, or I should say expanded AF area point. So I'm going to set my star button on metering and AF start, but then the little secret is you hit this, see it says info detail set, you hit the info button and it brings up more options. So these are the only 2 things that are important to me with this button, this is what's going to change when I'm pushing that button as opposed to my AF on button. First is the AF start position. I want to make sure that it doesn't move my AF point from where it is. I keep my AF point about 1/3 of the way down the frame in the center, because that's usually where the face is. So it's not going to move that. If I switch to registered AF point, there's a way you can register a certain spot. I suppose I could register that 1/3 of the way down spot, but honestly, I can never remember how to register it. It's a 2-button press, and I think it's different on every camera. So I don't really stress about it. And, the default is the center for registered. I don't want that. I want it to stay where I left it. So I have that selected, and then AF area. This is the key. I have this on the expanded AF area. Now you can see there's some new things here. So the first 4 are spot AF 1 point, expanded AF4 and expanded AF8. Then those 4 are repeated, one spot, 1 point, expanded, but with this padlock icon. And what the padlock does, it's a little confusing why they made it a padlock, but what the padlock does is it turns off the tracking. So no tracking. So now that's just my simple AF point, no tracking. Whatever's under that focus point, that expanded AF area, is what the camera's gonna focus on. So the net result of that is when I am shooting and I use my AF on button, I have tracking. So I can focus on Bailey and then I can change to Luke, and it's gonna, as I move around, it's gonna stay on them until I let go of the focus button. Now, if I switch to the star button, whatever is under that focus area is gonna be in focus. Regardless of whatever it sees, it doesn't care about faces or eyes or anything, whatever's under there. So for example, here's my Atomos, right? So when I am on if I use focus tracking, that's my AF on button. Right now, it's gonna focus on Bailey, right? Let me open up here a little bit. So it's gonna focus on Bailey no matter how much I get that in the foreground. But if I switch to my star button, now I'm focused on the Atomos, and it's going to stay on the Atomos, but if I move over, it's going to switch over to Bailey, right, and Luke. So here on the Atomos, I'm holding down my star button, and I've got it there, and I've got it there, and it's going to switch constantly. Whereas with the AF on button, it's not going to switch because it's tracking. So no matter where, if I move around here, it's just going to stay on it. So that to me is the best of both worlds because it gives me the option to control however I want. So it's kind of, the thing is with all this, you have to figure out exactly what works for you. Everybody's a bit different how you shoot. Now my R5 Mark II, I use as my remote camera. And really the only difference, there's a few different settings. I don't think it has the half button press for the AF on button, but for the most part, the settings are the same with the R5 Mark II. I set it up a little bit differently because it's a remote. It's on stage and it's looking out into the crowd. And hopefully Luke's in the foreground and I want it to focus on him. There's 2 main settings that I changed. Well, 3. First of all, I put the focus back on the shutter button because I use a remote, I use a Pocket Wizard, and I want it to activate the autofocus with the shutter button, which is what the Pocket Wizard does. Also, I've switched from the expanded AF area to the whole area AF because I wanted to look at the whole frame and just wherever it sees a person, I want it to focus on. And the other thing is I have the eye AF off. Not the eye tracking for my eyes. That's already off on both cameras, on all cameras. But I don't want it to track somebody's eyes because if Luke's facing the camera, that's great. And I've got a crowd of 50,000 people behind him. But if he turns around and it's his back, I've got 50,000 pairs of eyes looking back at the camera. I don't want it to focus on the eyes. I want it to focus on him. So with the eye thing off, let me show you where that is. We did it earlier. It is right here. So eye detection, I have this on auto. If I disable that, that is then the camera's going to look for a person because I have a people detection on. It's going to look for a body. It's going to look for a head, but it's not looking for eyes. So that to me makes a huge difference for that remote because it's not going to focus on the people. It's going to, or the crowd that's looking back, it's going to focus on Luke. So bottom line is you've got to go through and figure out what works for you. All of this stuff, combine this with the video about the R3 and that game changer setting video, and hopefully you can figure out what the best way is to work for you, for your particular style of shooting. This is how I shoot. Man, let me tell you, it works so well. I mean, I almost never have a picture out of focus anymore. It's kind of insane. I'm all about speed and efficiency, and I want to just be able to focus on what I want it to focus on really quickly without really thinking about it too much. So Jose and all the other people that asked about the autofocus settings for these latest Canon cameras, I hope that helps. If you all have any follow-up questions, I probably left something out. So go ahead and drop them in the comments below. I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Otherwise, if you've got another topic you want me to delve into, you certainly know how you do it. You go ahead to askdavidbergman.com. You submit your questions on that form, and I will do my best to answer as many as I can get to. If you do like these videos, I do always appreciate you hitting that like button. And of course, subscribe to the Adorama YouTube channel. Go ahead and click that bell icon so you're notified when new shows come out from me and all the hosts here on Adorama TV. Thanks so much for joining me, and hope to see you next time right here on Ask David Bergman.